Sometimes the most expensive decision a person ever makes is choosing kindness over convenience. The automatic doors of Green Valley Market slid open with their familiar whisper as Ethan Brooks hurried across the polished floor, carrying a stack of inventory reports. His name badge slightly crooked after another 10-hour shift that had already stretched longer than promised. The late afternoon rain drummed softly against the wide glass windows while customers rushed inside with shopping carts, umbrellas, and impatient expressions, each person focused on getting home before the storm grew worse. Ethan glanced at the old watch on his wrist and smiled despite his exhaustion. Lily would be waiting for him with another drawing taped to the refrigerator, and even after losing his wife years ago, that simple thought had become enough to carry him through every difficult day. "Brooks," his manager shouted from the front registers. "We've got a delivery truck running late. I need everyone on the floor. No distractions today." Ethan nodded without complaint. "You got it." He had learned long ago that arguing never changed anything. Quiet dignity often carried a man farther than loud frustration ever could. Then everything changed in a single heartbeat. Near the entrance, a young woman wrapped in a simple beige coat stopped walking. One hand rested against her stomach. The other reached toward the wall, as if searching for something solid enough to hold her up. Her breathing became shallow. A grocery basket slipped from her fingers. Apples rolled across the tile floor. Several shoppers turned their heads. A few lifted their phones. Someone whispered that she probably just needed water. Someone else shrugged and kept walking. Ethan was already moving before his mind had finished thinking. He set the reports aside and reached her just as her knees weakened. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" he asked gently, keeping his voice calm. Her eyes opened for only a moment before closing again, her face pale beneath the bright store lights. "Call 911, Ethan said firmly to the crowd. The silence that answered him lasted far too long. "Brooks," his manager yelled again, this time louder. "Get back to your station. Emergency services can handle it." Ethan looked toward the office, then back at the woman. Rain streaked down the glass behind her like silver lines across a gray sky. "She needs help now," he answered quietly. "That's not your job. Today it is." The manager marched forward, his face tightening with anger. "If you walk out those doors during your shift, don't bother coming back." For just a second, Ethan thought about Lily. The rent due next week. The empty savings account. The insurance they could not afford to lose. Every practical reason begged him to stay exactly where he was. Then he looked down at the frightened woman, who instinctively wrapped both hands around her unborn child as another wave of dizziness overtook her. Ethan bent carefully, lifting her with steady arms before hurrying toward the parking lot as thunder echoed across the darkening sky. Behind him, his manager's final words cut through the rain. "You're fired." Ethan never looked back. He simply carried the stranger toward his aging pickup truck, unaware that the woman resting unconscious in his arms was Victoria Hayes, the billionaire CEO of Hayes Global Industries, traveling without security, without headlines, and without anyone knowing her name. Inside her purse, hidden beneath an ordinary wallet and a bottle of water, a phone continued vibrating over and over again. Across its glowing screen flashed the same urgent message that Ethan never saw. CEO Hayes Global, emergency board meeting. The emergency room was quieter than Ethan expected. Soft footsteps echoed across polished floors while nurses moved with calm efficiency beneath bright fluorescent lights that never seemed to dim. He sat alone in a plastic chair outside the examination room, rainwater still dripping from the sleeves of his worn work jacket. A receptionist approached with a clipboard and offered a polite smile. "Sir, are you family?" Ethan shook his head. "No, ma'am. I just brought her in." "Do you know her name?" "No." "Any emergency contact?" Ethan glanced toward the closed door and slowly answered. "I do not even know who she is." The receptionist nodded with understanding before walking away, leaving him alone with nothing except the steady ticking of the wall clock and the growing realization that he no longer had a job to return to. His phone buzzed in his pocket. The screen showed one small picture that always made him smile. "Lily." He answered immediately. "So far." Her cheerful voice filled the quiet hallway. "Daddy," Are you almost done? I made grilled cheese. Well, I tried. Ethan laughed softly for the first time that day. I cannot wait to taste it. Are you coming home? There was a brief silence. I will be a little late. Everything okay? He looked toward the examination room once more before answering honestly. Someone needed help. Lily did not ask another question. She simply said the same words her mother used to say years ago. Then you did the right thing. Ethan closed his eyes for a moment, holding on to those words like a lifeline. Across the hallway, a doctor finally stepped outside, removing his glasses with a relieved smile. She's going to be all right. Ethan stood immediately. And the baby? Healthy heartbeat. Both are stable. Whoever brought her here got her here in time. Ethan released a slow breath he had not realized he had been holding. Thank God. Would you like to see her before you leave? The doctor asked. Ethan shook his head. No, sir. She deserves to wake up without strangers standing over her. At least leave your name. Ethan smiled politely. It is not important. The doctor looked surprised. She will probably want to thank you. Ethan slipped his old truck keys into his pocket. If she is healthy enough to say thank you, that is already enough. Without another word, he walked toward the hospital exit, unnoticed by nearly everyone passing through the busy corridor. Outside, the rain had slowed to a gentle mist. His aging pickup started on the second try, coughing before settling into its familiar rumble. The fuel gauge hovered just above empty, but he pointed the truck toward home anyway. 20 minutes later, he climbed the narrow stairs to the small apartment he shared with Lily. The smell of slightly burned bread drifted through the kitchen. Lily stood proudly beside two uneven grilled cheese sandwiches and a bowl of canned tomato soup. I told you I cooked. Ethan smiled as though she had prepared a 5-star dinner. Looks perfect. She studied his face carefully while they sat down together. Daddy, why do you look sad? Ethan reached across the table and squeezed her hand gently. Because sometimes doing the right thing costs more than you expect. Lily thought quietly before answering with the simple wisdom only a child could offer. But it is still the right thing. Ethan looked at his daughter, then at the modest apartment that had somehow remained filled with warmth despite every hardship life had placed inside it. He nodded slowly. Yes, sweetheart. It always is. Neither of them noticed the black luxury sedan that rolled quietly past the apartment building before disappearing into the evening traffic, its passengers carrying a single question that would soon change all three of their lives. Who was the man who walked away without asking for anything in return? Morning sunlight spilled gently through the hospital window as Victoria Hayes opened her eyes to the quiet rhythm of medical monitors and distant conversations drifting through the hallway. For a brief moment, she forgot where she was. Then memory returned all at once. The grocery store, the dizziness, the stranger whose steady voice had cut through the confusion like a lighthouse in a storm. Her hand rested instinctively on her stomach. The baby moved softly beneath her palm, and relief filled her heart before any words could. A nurse entered carrying a clipboard and smiled warmly. Good morning. How are you feeling today? Victoria returned the smile. Much better. The man who brought me here, is he still here? The nurse hesitated before gently shaking her head. He left after the doctor confirmed that both you and your baby were safe. Victoria looked toward the empty doorway. Did he leave his name? No. He only wanted to know if you were going to be all right. Victoria lowered her eyes, surprised by an unfamiliar feeling. Throughout her career, people had always wanted something from her. Investors wanted contracts. Reporters wanted headlines. Competitors wanted leverage. Even charity events often came with cameras and publicity. But the man who had carried her through the rain had asked for nothing. Can I see the security footage? She asked quietly. Less than an hour later, the hospital administrator escorted her into a small security office. The recording played across several monitors. Victoria watched Ethan step through the emergency entrance with rain soaking his jacket while carefully supporting her with remarkable patience. She noticed the way he spoke calmly to every nurse, never raising his voice, never demanding attention. She watched him refuse paperwork that would have listed him as family because he believed honesty mattered more than convenience. Then another recording appeared. It showed him answering a telephone call. Although there was no audio, The change in his face was unmistakable. The tired lines disappeared for just a moment, replaced by the gentle smile of a father speaking with his child. Victoria found herself smiling too. "Can you zoom in?" she asked. The technician enlarged the image just enough to reveal the faded employee badge still clipped to Ethan's jacket. Green Valley Market. Ethan Brooks. Before Victoria could say another word, her personal assistant rushed into the room carrying a tablet and several folders. "Miss Hayes, the board has postponed the emergency meeting until tomorrow morning. We have been trying to locate you for almost 18 hours. Victoria accepted the tablet without looking away from the frozen image on the screen. "Find this man." Her assistant glanced at the monitor. "Is he an employee?" "No." "A business partner?" "No." "Then why are we searching for him?" Victoria took a slow breath. "Because he saved my child before he knew my name." The assistant nodded immediately. "We will have an address within the hour." Victoria turned back toward the screen once more, but another detail suddenly caught her attention. The timestamp revealed that Ethan had remained inside the hospital for nearly 2 hours before quietly leaving. He had sacrificed far more than a few minutes of kindness. Something about that realization stayed with her all afternoon. By evening, another report arrived. It contained only a few pages, yet every sentence made the room feel quieter. Ethan Brooks, widower, father of 1 daughter. Employed until yesterday at Green Valley Market. Employment status, terminated. Reason, abandoned assigned duties during scheduled shift. Victoria read the final line twice before gently closing the folder. Outside her hospital window, the sun dipped below the city skyline, painting the clouds with soft shades of gold and amber. Inside the silent room, she whispered words that no board member, shareholder, or reporter had ever heard her say. He lost everything because he chose to save a stranger. Now, it is my turn to find him. The following morning began with uncertainty instead of routine. Ethan sat at the small kitchen table while sunlight filtered through faded curtains, illuminating a notebook where every monthly expense had been carefully written in neat handwriting. Rent, utilities, groceries, Lily's school supplies. The numbers had always been close, but now they simply did not work. He folded the notebook shut before Lily walked into the room carrying her backpack. She looked at him with the quiet awareness children sometimes possess before they have the words to explain it. "Are we going to be okay, Daddy?" Ethan smiled with gentle confidence that hid every worry inside his heart. "We always find a way." Lily nodded because she believed him completely. "Mom used to say that too." Ethan reached for her hand. "Your mom was usually right." After dropping Lily off at school, Ethan spent the morning visiting repair shops, warehouses, and hardware stores across town. At every stop, he filled out another application, shook another manager's hand, and thanked another stranger for their time. Some employers promised to call. Others politely explained they were not hiring. By early afternoon, the soles of his boots felt heavier than they had in years. But he continued walking because stopping would not put food on the table. Across the city, Victoria Hayes stepped out of a black sedan in front of Hayes' global headquarters, where cameras and reporters already crowded the entrance. She greeted them with the same composed smile that had made financial magazines call her one of the strongest business leaders in America. No one could tell that her thoughts remained fixed on a man who owned little more than an old pickup truck and a quiet sense of honor. Inside the executive conference room, board members discussed quarterly earnings, acquisitions, and international expansion. Victoria listened respectfully, but the folder containing Ethan Brooks's background report rested unopened beside her tablet. Finally, one director paused and asked, "Victoria, are you feeling all right? You seem distracted today." She answered with complete honesty, "I've been thinking about character." Several executives exchanged curious glances. "Character?" another asked. Victoria folded her hands calmly. "Every company talks about values. Very few people are willing to lose something valuable in order to live by them." The room fell silent before the meeting continued. Later that afternoon, her chief of security entered her office carrying another report. "We completed our investigation." Victoria looked up immediately. "Tell me." "Mr. Brooks has been searching for work since this morning. He has visited 11 businesses so far. Has he accepted any financial assistance? No, he has not asked anyone for help. Victoria stood and walked toward the wide windows overlooking the city below. Does he know we have been following him? No, ma'am. Another brief silence settled over the office. Continue watching from a respectful distance, she said. Do not interfere. I want to know who he is when nobody is offering him anything. As evening approached, Ethan finally returned to the elementary school to pick up Lily. She ran toward him with a bright smile and a folded sheet of construction paper. Guess what? She said excitedly. Our teacher asked us to draw our heroes today. Ethan laughed softly. Who did you choose? Lily handed him the picture. It showed a little girl holding hands with a man wearing a simple blue jacket beneath a bright yellow sun. Across the top, she had written in careful second-grade handwriting, My hero is my daddy because he helps people even when it is hard. Ethan stared at the drawing for several long seconds before carefully folding it and placing it inside his jacket pocket close to his heart. Neither he nor Lily noticed the black sedan parked quietly across the street, where Victoria watched through the window just long enough to see a father embrace his daughter with genuine gratitude instead of disappointment. For the first time in many years, the billionaire CEO realized that the richest person she had met all week was the man who had lost his job without losing his kindness. The weekend arrived with clear skies, but the brightness outside did little to ease the uncertainty inside Ethan's small apartment. He woke before sunrise as he always did, quietly preparing pancakes from the last of the flour while Lily sat at the kitchen counter coloring another picture with a box of crayons that had long ago become too short to hold comfortably. She looked up and smiled. Daddy, these are my favorite pancakes. Ethan laughed softly. That is because they're the only pancakes I know how to make. She giggled, and for a few precious minutes the apartment felt untouched by worry. After breakfast, Ethan opened his laptop and searched through dozens of job listings. Warehouse positions, delivery routes, maintenance work, anything that would allow him to provide for Lily with honest work. Every application required patience. Every rejection demanded a little more faith. By noon, he had received 3 polite emails thanking him for applying before explaining that another candidate had been selected. Ethan closed the computer without frustration. One door closes, he whispered to himself. Another one will open. Across town, Victoria sat in the back seat of her sedan, reading another update from her security team. They had documented Ethan's entire morning, but there was nothing dramatic inside the report. No complaints, no anger, no attempt to blame anyone for his situation. Only another list of applications, another afternoon spent looking for work, and another stop at the neighborhood library where he used the public computers because he wanted to save electricity at home. Victoria folded the report slowly. He still does not. No, we are watching. Her assistant nodded. No. And he has told no one about what happened at the store except his daughter. Victoria looked out the window as families walked through a nearby park. Then we continue waiting. You are still testing him? Her assistant asked carefully. Victoria smiled fondly. No, I think life has already tested him enough. I'm trying to understand him. Later that afternoon, Ethan and Lily stopped at a small community food pantry where volunteers handed out fresh vegetables and bread. Ethan accepted only what they truly needed. When another volunteer offered him 2 extra grocery bags, he gently shook his head. Please give those to the family behind us. They probably need them more than we do. Lily looked up at him with quiet admiration, but said nothing. As they walked toward the parking lot, she finally asked, Daddy, are you embarrassed that we came here? Ethan knelt beside her and brushed a loose strand of blonde hair away from her face. There is never any shame in accepting kindness when you truly need it. The important thing is remembering to share kindness whenever you are able. Unseen by either of them, Victoria stood near the entrance wearing a simple baseball cap and casual clothes, blending easily with the weekend crowd. She had insisted on coming without security surrounding her because she wanted to see Ethan through her own eyes instead of reading another report. She watched him thank every volunteer with genuine gratitude. She watched him carry only 1 grocery bag, even though he could have taken more. Most of all, she watched the way Lily reached for her father's hand without hesitation, as though the safest place in the world was walking beside him. Victoria felt something inside her heart shift in a way that quarterly profits and billion-dollar negotiations never could. This was not a man pretending to be good because someone important might be watching. He believed in kindness, even when he thought no one would ever notice. As Ethan and Lily disappeared around the corner, Victoria quietly turned to her assistant and spoke with calm certainty. Arrange a meeting. Not as a chief executive officer. Not yet. I want him to meet the woman he rescued before he ever meets the company that bears my name. Monday morning arrived with crisp autumn air and pale sunlight stretching across the sidewalks as Ethan walked Lily to school, each of them carrying a paper cup of hot cocoa instead of coffee, because Lily insisted that Mondays deserved something special. She skipped ahead for a few steps before turning back with a hopeful smile. Do you think today will be a lucky day? Ethan smiled warmly. Luck is wonderful when it comes, but we keep doing the right thing even on ordinary days. Lily nodded as though committing those words to memory. Then I hope today is ordinary and lucky. After leaving her at the school entrance, Ethan headed toward another interview at a small family-owned warehouse on the edge of town. The owner welcomed him kindly, reviewed his application, and listened carefully as Ethan explained his years of experience managing inventory. The conversation went well until the owner reached the final page. I have to ask, he said gently. Your previous employer marked that you left during your shift without authorization. Can you explain what happened? Ethan could have invented a dozen excuses that sounded more favorable. Instead, he answered with complete honesty. A pregnant woman became seriously ill. I believed helping her was more important than keeping my position. The owner remained quiet for several moments before closing the folder. I respect your honesty, Mr. Brooks. Truly. But my insurance company prefers employees with stable work histories. I am sorry. Ethan stood, offered a sincere handshake, and thanked him for the opportunity before quietly leaving the office. Across the parking lot, a woman wearing a light blue sweater and sunglasses sat inside a modest sedan, watching through the windshield. Victoria had arrived nearly 20 minutes earlier, determined to meet Ethan naturally rather than through lawyers or executives. Yet after witnessing the interview, she found herself unable to interrupt. She watched Ethan walk across the lot with the same calm expression he carried everywhere else. There was disappointment in his eyes, but no bitterness. There was uncertainty in his future, but no resentment toward the man who had just declined to hire him. Victoria stepped out of her car just as Ethan reached the sidewalk. "Excuse me," she called softly. Ethan turned, recognizing her immediately. Surprise crossed his face, followed almost instantly by relief. "You are feeling better." Victoria smiled. "Thanks to you." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The city moved around them with passing traffic, distant sirens, and the rustle of leaves carried by a cool breeze. Yet the silence between them felt strangely comfortable rather than awkward. "I never thanked you," Victoria finally said. Ethan shook his head gently. "You already did." She looked puzzled. "Ow! You and your baby are healthy. That was all I hoped for." Victoria studied him carefully. "The hospital told me you stayed for nearly 2 hours. Someone should have been there until the doctor came out. You missed work because of me." Ethan smiled with quiet grace. "No, I missed work because of choice I made." Victoria lowered her eyes for a moment before looking back at him. "Would you allow me to buy you lunch?" Ethan hesitated, then laughed softly. "Only if you let me choose somewhere that does not charge $12 for a sandwich." Victoria laughed for the first time in days. "That sounds fair." Neither of them noticed the faint smile spreading across the face of her assistant, who remained inside the parked sedan, watching from a respectful distance. For the first time since the rainstorm that had unexpectedly brought their lives together, they were no longer a grateful stranger and a quiet rescuer. They were simply two people walking side by side toward a small neighborhood diner, neither realizing that before the afternoon was over, one life-changing truth would remain hidden while another far more important discovery had already begun. The little diner Ethan chose sat on a quiet corner where the coffee was always fresh. The booths had been repaired more times than replaced, and everyone greeted strangers with the same warm smile. Victoria looked around with quiet curiosity as they settled into a booth beside the window. It had been years since she had eaten anywhere without a reservation, security staff, or reporters waiting outside. Somehow, this ordinary place felt more peaceful than the finest restaurants she had ever visited. A waitress approached carrying 2 menus. "Good afternoon. What can I get you folks?" Ethan smiled. "The turkey sandwich special, please." Victoria glanced at the menu before laughing softly. "I will have the same." After the waitress walked away, Ethan folded his hands on the table. "You look much stronger than the last time I saw you." "I feel much stronger," Victoria answered. "The doctor says the baby is doing very well." Ethan's shoulders relaxed with genuine relief. "That is wonderful news." She studied him for a long moment. "You never asked whether I could repay you." Ethan looked almost surprised by the question. "Repay me for what?" "For helping me." He smiled with the same quiet grace she had come to admire. "If kindness becomes a transaction, it stops being kindness." Those words lingered between them long after the waitress returned with lunch. For several minutes, they spoke about ordinary things instead of extraordinary lives. Ethan shared stories about Lily's love of drawing and her dream of becoming a teacher one day. Victoria listened with sincere interest, asking thoughtful questions instead of polite ones. When Ethan spoke about his late wife, his voice softened, carrying sadness without bitterness. "She believed every person deserves respect before they deserve judgment," he said. "I have tried to raise Lily the same way." Victoria lowered her eyes thoughtfully. "She must have been remarkable." "She still is," Ethan replied quietly. "Every lesson she taught us still lies in our home." The conversation paused as sunlight streamed through the diner window, painting warm patterns across the table. Victoria realized she had not looked at her phone once in nearly an hour. Her assistant had already sent 6 messages reminding her about board meetings, investors, and interviews. For the first time in years, none of them felt urgent. Ethan noticed her phone vibrating again. "You should answer if someone needs you." Victoria smiled gently, before turning it face down. "Right now, I'm exactly where I need to be." When lunch ended, Ethan reached for the check, but Victoria quietly stopped him. "Please, let me thank you this once." Ethan hesitated only a moment before nodding. "All right, but next time, lunch is my turn." The words escaped so naturally that both of them smiled. Outside the diner, they stepped into the cool afternoon breeze. Across the street, children laughed in a small park while golden leaves drifted slowly from the trees. Ethan glanced toward the elementary school a few blocks away. "I need to pick up Lily soon." Victoria's eyes brightened. "Would it be all right if I met her someday?" Ethan answered without hesitation. "I think she would like that." At that exact moment, a luxury sedan turned the corner and slowed almost to a stop before continuing past them. Inside, one of Hayes Global's senior board members happened to glance through the window. His eyes widened with disbelief as he recognized the woman standing beside an unemployed father outside a neighborhood diner. Before Victoria noticed the car had passed, the executive had already reached for his phone. Within minutes, the boardroom she had left behind would be filled with questions, speculation, and concern, while the one truth that mattered most remained known only to her heart. She had come searching for the man who saved her life, but she was beginning to discover someone who might quietly change it forever. The next morning, Ethan stood outside Lincoln Elementary waiting for Lily as children poured through the front doors carrying backpacks, art projects, and stories about their day. A familiar voice called his name. "Mr. Brooks?" He turned to see Victoria walking toward him in a simple cream-colored sweater, her hair pulled back, looking more like a neighbor than someone accustomed to boardrooms and private flights. Ethan smiled warmly. "You found us." Victoria laughed softly. "You did say I should meet Lily someday." Before Ethan could answer, the school doors burst open and Lily came running across the sidewalk. "Daddy!" She wrapped her arms around him before noticing the unfamiliar woman standing nearby. Ethan knelt beside her. "Lily, this is Victoria. She is the lady I told you about." Lily's blue eyes widened with recognition. "You are the baby lady." Victoria could not help smiling. "I guess I am." Lily stepped forward and offered her small hand with surprising confidence. "I am glad you and your baby are okay." Victoria gently shook her hand. Thank you. Your father made sure of that. They walked together toward a nearby ice cream stand where Lily happily explained every detail of second grade, her favorite books, and why strawberry ice cream was clearly superior to every other flavor. Victoria listened with genuine attention, laughing at Lily's stories and answering every curious question with patience. Watching them together, Ethan noticed something peaceful settle over the afternoon. It had been a long time since he had seen someone connect with Lily so naturally. As they sat beneath the shade of an old maple tree, Victoria quietly asked, "Lily, what do you think your father is best at?" The little girl answered without even thinking, "Helping people." Ethan smiled modestly. "She exaggerates." Lily immediately shook her head. "No, I do not. Daddy always says people are more important than schedules." Victoria lowered her eyes for a brief moment, remembering the grocery store and the words his manager had shouted before Ethan carried her into the rain. A comfortable silence settled over them until Victoria finally spoke again. "Ethan, I would like to ask you for a favor. If I can help, of course. Would you come with me tomorrow morning to an important meeting?" Ethan looked puzzled. "What kind of meeting?" "A business meeting." He laughed softly. "I'm not exactly a businessman." "You understand something many executives forget," Victoria replied. "Character." Ethan hesitated. "I do not even own a suit anymore." Victoria smiled with quiet warmth. "You already have everything you need." Before he could ask another question, her phone began vibrating once again. This time she glanced at the screen. More than 20 missed calls. Several urgent messages from board members. One message simply read, "Where are you?" The shareholders are demanding answers. Victoria calmly silenced the phone and slipped it back in her purse. Ethan noticed the concern in her eyes. "Is everything all right?" She met his gaze and answered honestly without revealing the whole truth. "Tomorrow will be a very important day." As the sun dipped lower across the park, they said goodbye and headed in different directions. Ethan walked home with Lily, still believing Victoria was simply a grateful professional facing a busy career. He had no idea that the building she had just invited him to enter was the headquarters of one of the largest companies in the country. Meanwhile, inside the top-floor boardroom of Hayes Global, executives sat around a polished conference table in growing frustration until the doors finally opened. Victoria walked inside with calm confidence, placed a single photograph of Ethan and Lily on the table, and quietly said, "Cancel the first item on today's agenda. Tomorrow, before we discuss profits, you are all going to meet the man who reminded me what leadership really looks like." The following morning, Ethan stood in front of the gleaming headquarters of Hayes Global wearing his only Navy suit, one he had not worn since a church Christmas service years earlier. Lily had carefully straightened his tie before school and whispered, "Remember, Daddy, just be yourself." Those words stayed with him as he stepped through the revolving doors into a lobby filled with polished marble, quiet conversations, and walls displaying awards from around the world. A receptionist greeted him with a warm smile. "Mr. Brooks, Miss Hayes is expecting you." Moments later, the elevator doors opened onto the executive floor. Ethan followed an assistant down a long hallway until enormous conference room doors slowly swung open. Nearly 30 executives turned to look at him. Some recognized him immediately from the investigation reports they had received the night before. Others simply wondered why an unemployed single father had been invited to the company's most important meeting. Ethan paused, suddenly aware that he did not belong in a room filled with tailored suits and billion-dollar decisions. Then Victoria entered. She walked confidently to the front of the room, her presence commanding instant silence. "Good morning," she began. "Before we discuss profits, projections, or acquisitions, I want to introduce someone who reminded me why this company exists in the first place." She turned toward Ethan with a grateful smile. "Several days ago, I collapsed inside a grocery store while traveling without security or anyone knowing my identity. Hundreds of people saw what happened. Only one person chose to help. The room remained perfectly still. That man carried me through the rain, stayed at the hospital until my child and I were safe, refused recognition, accepted no reward, and lost his job because he believed another human life mattered more than his paycheck. Several board members quietly lowered their eyes. Victoria continued, her voice calm but filled with conviction. Leadership is not measured by the size of a company. It is measured by the choices we make when nobody is watching. She walked toward Ethan and held out a folder. Mr. Brooks, on behalf of Hayes Global, I would like to offer you the position of Director of Community Outreach and Employee Values. This role will create programs that support families, recognize everyday acts of kindness, and ensure that no employee is ever punished for helping someone in genuine need. Ethan looked at the folder, but did not open it immediately. May I ask one question? Victoria nodded. Of course. Ethan smiled gently. Will this program give second chances to people who need them? Victoria answered without hesitation. That is exactly why it exists. Only then did Ethan accept the offer. Quiet applause began at one end of the table before spreading throughout the room until every executive was standing. No celebration felt louder than the silence that had come before it. Weeks later, the changes reached far beyond one company. New employee assistance programs were created. Volunteer leave became official policy. Thousands of workers discovered that compassion and professionalism could stand side by side. On a bright Saturday afternoon, Victoria visited Ethan and Lily at the neighborhood park. Lily laughed as she handed Victoria a new drawing. It showed 3 adults and 2 children beneath a golden sun, including the baby who would soon be born. Victoria smiled through grateful eyes. Ethan looked across the playground where families gathered without knowing the extraordinary story that had quietly begun with one simple choice. He realized that losing a job had never been the end of his journey. It had been the beginning of a better one. Because kindness never asks who someone is before offering a helping hand, and true wealth is not counted in dollars, but in the lives forever changed by quiet dignity, unwavering grace, and the courage to do what is right even when the cost is everything.